Hey everyone, it's been a while since I uploaded the last video about short RPGs, so here's a summary of some of the ones I have played recently. And similarly as previous videos, you can finish these games in something like 20 hours. There's just one that needs 30 hours, but I'll explain why I wanted to add it here. Oftentimes there's no particular order in these videos, but here I want to go from decent to best. Without further ado, let's begin. In the 7th place we find Calamity Angels. It can be finished in 20 hours, but for those interested to dive some more, there are extra quests down the line. The story here is simple. Yuri wants to be a leader in one of these groups that deliver packages, cause in this world they are seen as heroes or something along those lines. And despite not being that brilliant, he was assigned to one of these squads. Unfortunately, this group is known as Calamity Angels, as they messed up every single delivery. So it is up to Yuri to set things right, or die from stress as your average worker nowadays. It takes the last place because these kinds of stories aren't for everyone. I think it is enjoyable, but hard to recommend due to the kind of humor that is presented, as they tend to go back and forth with their peculiar hiccups, like a heavy narcolepsy, a mage that refuses to use magic, a stingy elf who worships a demon, and so on. Well, with that in mind, there are several laughable moments, and an amazing voice acting behind, along a like story. Its gameplay is quite creative, but maybe way too easy for its own good, aside from boss battles. But let's go by parts. Here you need to deliver packages. At first it isn't that complicated, until you need to deliver something like a fish in the mid of a volcano area. That is where things might get interesting, as every package has specific attributes, some being icy, fragile, and so on. And the deal is that Yuri and company need to deliver them in time, unlike your average parcel service these days. Along the board there are different kinds of events, similarly as Mario Party, Monopoly, or those table games. As I said, in general, it is an easy entry. More often than not, you have enough time to reach your destination. However, some stages can be a piece of work, like mazes, mainly because of how they are connected. In any case, once you enter in combat, this thing is random as heck, and your patience may be tested. Ideally you want to use moves where your characters tend to have a happy face, otherwise they may do whatever they want. And with this, expect the unexpected. That is the main charm here, because everything is possible. And yes, fighting bosses like that may feel like a kick in the nuts, but believe me, once you get the hang of the game, it is quite entertaining. In the 6th place, Touhou New World. It can be finished in like 10 hours. Each character has a different journey and different skills, so it is worth playing it a couple of times. In Marisa's case, while sleeping, somehow she gets transported to the real world, but she doesn't get how it worked. So she asks Rinosuke for help, and he gives her a special orb. That is how she gets transported once again. While on the other hand, Reimu reaches this place after getting hit by a giant doll. However, she has no idea how to come back, until she finds Sumire, a girl who is tired about her average days. Whatever the case, each character gets back to Gensokyo in one way or another, where now they wonder how to send Sumire back to the real world, plus solve other problems that start to rise in between. Along the journey, Reimu and Marisa will rely on those characters they get along with, so both the stories are entertaining, in their own accord. Now the main deal is that if you're into Touhou games, chances are that some parts will grind a gear or two, as there are some misconceptions, but leaving those details aside, it is an enjoyable tale. In this game, you will have to tackle different stages, where depending from the objective, sometimes you need to take down some enemies, or reach a particular place. In general, they are not that complicated. If you have some experience in bullet hells and stuff like that, hard here is more like normal. In any case, what some levels needed were some more spies here and there, because oftentimes the rewards feel a bit hollow. In other words, it isn't worth exploring that much. Sure, there are some interesting things, but in the end it is not needed, and for better or worse you will traverse some areas multiple times, which can feel a bit tiring, but considering the time it takes to finish this game, I had no problems with that. Some bosses definitely needed a little extra work, Some can turn kinda easy if you just jump around, or run in circles, like there's no tomorrow. Fortunately, there are some cool challenges as you go down the line, so brace yourself, as they can go bonkers with powerful moves and special attacks that may get you every now and then. In the 5th place, Witch Spring Heart. If you just focus in the main story, it can be finished in like 20 hours. But you can decide if you want to leave it there or play some more, cause there's plenty of content here. In this tale we follow Pieberry, a little witch who lives alone in the forest. In general, her days are kinda chill, until human beings start to reach much more frequently the Black Witch's Forest. That is when she decides to train because these encounters are getting harder and harder. Not that she really minds that, cause that is an easy way to take pies out of soldiers, and that's one of her favorite foods. I will say, don't let the charming nature of this game fool you. Well, sure, there are multiple moments that are definitely entertaining, there are some others that may squeeze your heart a bit too much. In the end, the tale takes some twist here and there, where you end up questioning multiple things. It is definitely worth checking out. Its gameplay is quite different from your average RPG, because you don't increase levels just by fighting. After doing different kinds of activities, either advancing, gathering, fighting, among other things, you will feel this gauge. And once it is full, you can do different activities, between swimming, push-ups and so on, where you get different attributes up. In the end, it depends what you wanna do. Personally, I made her into physical mage, because I didn't want to see another classic witch, so she beats the ass out of the enemies here. But in the end, there are different routes, as well as weapons you can use. What I love so much about this game is that there are many secrets. For example, maybe you need to beat a specific icy enemy, that gives you an item that later you can use to fully take down another boss, and take a reward. Yep, details like that are found pretty much everywhere, so if you enjoy exploring, there are tons of things to do. And despite it looking kinda easy, I will say, do not underestimate this game. There are some bosses that can be tricky to deal with. Train your pets and farm some items before trying some of those enemies that look tough, because you may get into really hard challenges. In the 4th place, Touhou Spell Carnival. It takes like 15 hours to finish, but it is worth replaying it because of the number of characters you can use, as well as different challenges. Now this entry can be hit or miss in a sense, cause I know not many enjoy Nights in the Nightmare, and things work in a similar fashion here. In any case, the first thing you know is that Reimu and Marisa are running away from Roemilia, as their sneaking backfired. After this confrontation they find that Roemilia was under a curse, so this whole mess wasn't just about betting their spell cards in a sketchy carnival. Of course, the story isn't the main reason to play this game. Yeah, it is fun in different moments, plus it's amazing voice acting, but its gameplay and music are the things I really enjoyed. This game was developed in collaboration with the Steam Entertainment, and it is easy to see because of the influences from Nights in the Nightmare. Now, this is a real-time bullet hell with, of course, RPG elements. And while I oftentimes encourage people in this channel to try hard mode and things like that, yeah, things here can get out of hand if you don't know what you're doing. This is more like a stage after stage adventure, where most of times you will fight bosses. Of course, that is where things can get unforgiving. Some of these bosses have moves that can disappear your whole team in matter of seconds. The deal is that you need to find the right balance between moves to attack and protect your team. In this game's level alone won't help you that much, so strategy takes an important role, at least in hard difficulty. In normal, you can throw things left and right without that much of an issue, but in hard it doesn't work like that. What I have to point out is that having this game in something like the 3DS would have been much more entertaining because of the stylus. Using a controller can be a bit slow, at least if you try to move two teams in different parts of the board. In the 3rd entry, God Eater 3. Here's where parentheses start to come, because it can be finished in 30 hours, at least the main story, but quests do not take that much time, so you can play a couple of them and move on, similarly as Monster Hunter games. Okay, as I shared this game a few weeks ago, I won't ramble that much. The story takes place some years after God Eater 2 events. And don't worry, you don't need to play the second entry. While it definitely helps with lore and all that stuff, ultimately it isn't needed. The deal here is that there is another disaster, and things look grim as ever, cause now the government use orphans as cheap labor. Its gameplay is like a Monster Hunter game. You pick a weapon among different classes, some side characters, and jump into the fray. After that, everything is going to depend from your skills in these kinds of games. The thing is, if it starts to become hard to survive hits and bosses take way too long to beat, just take some time to farm materials or unlock blueprints by finishing different quests, upgrade your character skills, and try again. You will find that this game isn't that hard, but really entertaining once you reach late levels. In the second place, we find Ariana and the Elder Codex. I know this game hasn't been released in the side of the lake, but that is pretty much next week. And don't worry, I won't spoil things. This entry can be finished in 20 hours, unless you decide to get A ranks in every challenge. In this world, these 7 books help humanity to use magic. In other words, many activities became easy to do. However, someone tampered with them. This is how everything stopped. Here's where Ariana comes into play, as she is a librarian, able to get inside these books to fix them. Along the tale, you will be able to read the relationship between demons, humans, why these books are important, their peculiar stories and characters. Despite having a small cast, it was really good to read the whole story. And yeah, I recommend to take your time in the library, cause there's plenty of books that share the lore of this game. Its gameplay is kinda simple, but it delivers really well. Do not confuse this game with a Metroidvania. While it is true that you need to do some small backtrack, the truth is that it is a platformer with RPG elements. You won't run back and forth as in Symphony, Hollow Knight, and so on. Okay, with that out of the way, you need to get rid of the corruption by completing some challenges. All of them are time attacks, so you need to be efficient with your attacks and magics. At first it can be complicated, but as you get the mechanics, you will mow enemies left and right. So for those who are into platformers, yes, I recommend to play it in hard difficulty. That way elements and magics feel much more important, plus bosses get much more interesting to deal with. Now, I definitely recommend to play this game. It has a unique setting worth checking out. As honorable mentions, it is not a JRPG, but Dungeon Siege can be finished in something like 30 hours. Of course, it's going to depend how you tackle the game. Buccaneer or Cats Away can be finished in something like 15 hours. It is all about managing a crew of cats and assembling different kinds of boats. It is a decent game. And, in the first place, Ender Lilies and Ender Magnolia. Both of them are Metroidvanias, with a dash of Souls in between. For those who struggle with these kinds of games, Ender Magnolia has different settings, so you can turn it into an easy entry, but in all honesty, it is worth learning its mechanics, and each game can be finished in 20 hours. Okay, here I recommend to begin with Ender Lilies, as both stories are linked, and it is interesting to understand some of the references NPCs talk about in Ender Magnolia. In one side, this girl wakes up in an abandoned kingdom, unable to speak, but with a powerful ally by her side. The objective? Stop the rain, or wrath of the Old Ones, while Lilac, an Atuner, needs to find a way to save Homunculi and humans alike, as the land of humans turns Homunculi in a horrend beast. Both stories are simply beautiful. However, they are a bit tricky to get, as you need to read every single piece of paper, check the environment, and get NPCs' conversations. But once you put everything together, it is like holy Jesus! It blows your mind because of how deep these tales are. Personally, I like Ender Lilies a bit more, but Magnolia doesn't get that far behind. Gameplay-wise, as I said, both are Metroidvanias, so you will run up and down, gathering different skills to keep moving forward. They are kinda challenging in their own way, but the level design is superb, as you have to traverse multiple areas, and I definitely have to point that the artistic execution in these games are simply amazing. You will see both sides of the spectrum, really fantastic places, as well as hellholes. and in general, the whole journey is filled to the brim of interesting executions. Of course, bosses are the ones who most likely will own your arse, at least a couple of times. All I can recommend is try to equip the right skills to challenge different bosses, and so try to have something for exploration and other things to challenge enemies. There is definitely a point in both games where they kinda force you to use most tricks, but it works in an organic way, unless you're trying to brute force your way. With this, I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.